Welcome everybody to another episode of Fins Nation. I am your host, Louis Sung, and today, ladies and gentlemen, what I want to go ahead and talk about here is I think that all of this time, Chris Grier was actually right. What was he right about, though, you might be asking? Because so far, it looks like he's been right about a lot of stuff. Well, I'm going to go ahead and say right now, ladies and gentlemen, as of week 6 of the NFL season, what Chris Grier was right about was that statement that we all collectively as Miami Dolphins fans, even some of the smartest people that I knew, looked at what he said, heard what he said, and thought to themselves, this is probably the dumbest thing that Chris Grier has ever said. I will get into the details of it in just a moment, but before that, really quick, just want to go ahead and mention that as always, this show is brought to you by PrizePicks.com. PrizePicks.com is the revolutionary fantasy platform where you can now pick up to 6 different players across professional sports leagues. Whether that's the NFL, the NBA, the MLB, one of each, it's up to you to decide. Just choose whether your chosen player will get more or less than their projected stat. They give you free squares, special Taco Tuesday promos, Flex Friday specials where you can get your money back if you lose, or multiply the amount of money you can normally win. So with offers like that, it's hard to justify not signing up if you're any kind of a fantasy sports fan. So use the promo code 5, that's F-I-V-E, and they will match up to $100 on your initial deposit when you sign up. Again, that's promo code 5, F-I-V-E. Go to prizepicks.com, deposit your $100, and let PrizePicks give you $100 of their dollars for you to play with and get started winning today. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so let's just get into this real quick. So, for those of you who don't remember, this was actually a comment that I had talked about not too long ago, before the season started, and I discussed how I was very upset with a comment that Chris Grier had made, in that he mentioned that all of us collectively, being media, fans, whatever you want to discuss, we were all much more concerned about the Miami Dolphins offensive line than the Miami Dolphins themselves were. They decided that having Austin Jackson as the de facto right tackle was a brilliant strategy. They decided that to address left guard, they were just going to sign Isaiah Wynn from the New England Patriots, an injury-prone, not living up to expectations kind of offensive lineman who they were going to try to repurpose back into being a guard. Teron Armstead being his injury-prone self, and even now he is officially not available to play for a few weeks. So that was also part of their plan. And just trusting that Kendall Lamb, who, granted, he did good in New England last season for the brief time he was there, but for some reason, they decided the Dolphins had seen enough from Kendall Lamb in just those few reps to say, you know what, this is the guy. And I couldn't believe it. And neither could really anybody else. And when the season began, we were all just holding our collective breaths, knowing that Kendall Lamb was going to end up having to play for Teron Armstead at some point. We were hoping against hope that it would not be in week 1 that Kendall Lamb would be forced to go ahead and try to make that happen. But yet, folks, this incredible turn of events. The Miami Dolphins offensive line, and you can attribute it to whatever you want at this point. You can attribute it to the fact that Tua gets the ball out so fast, on average, only like a split second more than 2 seconds per snap every time he throws the ball, that he gets the ball out of there. You can attribute it to Butch Barry being a much better offensive line coach than whatever we've had in the past, and nobody saw that coming, believe me. Even the 3 yards per carry crew, they were trying to reserve judgment. They didn't want to go ahead and cast aspersions on the man or anything. We had heard a lot of bad things from people in Denver who had seen him before, but so far it looks like things are going well. Whether we want to acknowledge the reasons or not, whether we want to say it's the players, it's the coaching, it's just how the scheme works, whatever you want to say it, Chris Grier was right. We were a lot more concerned about the Miami Dolphins offensive line than the Dolphins themselves. And maybe that was just the trick, right? Maybe that was it. Maybe they had seen in practice, in training camp, in OTAs, in minicamp, all of these things, that they saw these players and said, you know what? We're good. We're fine. Like, the scheme is going to be designed so that the offensive linemen will be able to do an incredible job. And it's working. Even the people that we assumed, just erroneously assumed that these guys were not going to be good because of everything that we've seen in the past. We thought that Kendall Lamb was not going to be able to live up to the expectation that Teron Armstead would. Obviously, Teron Armstead is a better player. I'm not saying otherwise. But Kendall Lamb has done a fantastic job given the circumstances. He is a backup left tackle. And the way that he has been playing this season so far, he could easily start for several different football teams. I'm sure there are a lot of teams who would love to be able to get their hands on Kendall Lamb right now. I am almost sure that if we tried for what we obviously will not do this, but if we tried to trade Kendall Lamb to try to get something out of him, we could get probably at least a second round draft pick right now. For some offensive line starved team somewhere, Kendall Lamb is probably worth a fortune because he's playing like a starter caliber left tackle. And believe it or not, those are not as easy to come by as you would think. Isaiah Wynn, he is playing incredibly well. I know that I always use Pro Football Focus as a mention of saying, oh, well, take it with a grain of salt. You're not sure if this guy is going to be that special. He's probably going to have his moments where he's not going to be as good. But just go ahead and take a look at everything that's been going on. Take a look at all these players. Just basing it off of the overall blocking, Isaiah Wynn, his Pro Football Focus numbers are not great. But if you look at the actual film, Isaiah Wynn doesn't have that many losses. He really doesn't. And that was ultimately what we were looking for, right? We were just looking for players who would not lose every single snap that they played. Isaiah Wynn has done that. Like, you look at Pro Football Focus, and in Week 5 against the Giants, it basically says that Isaiah Wynn was awful. I try and I tend to look at the people who I trust to be watching film to get my evaluations from. And I usually go and I default to the guys from the 3 yards per carry crew. I look at Simon Clancy. I look at Alfredo Arteaga. I look at Chris Kaufman. Those guys are smart people. And regardless of what you think of them on social media, the way that they analyze the film, they look at it and say, you know what? This dude is actually doing really, really well. Isaiah Wynn, for all he had a couple of moments that ended up getting called back. He had a few penalties. But overall, Isaiah Wynn did a great job. He really, really did. Connor Williams continues to be a stud as a blocking center. His snaps getting better. They're getting better. So just take that for what you will. Robert Hunt continues to be a stud. If I'm looking at the Dolphins and saying if there's somebody on that offensive line that you need to extend, it absolutely needs to be Robert Hunt. He has been the most consistently good player aside from Connor Williams himself as a blocker the entire time that he's been on this team. He is a star right guard, and the Dolphins need to find a way to keep him somehow. I don't know how. I don't know where that money's going to come from, but they need to keep Robert Hunt. And Austin Jackson, this is the real turnaround. Austin Jackson had himself, and this is per the 3 yards per carry crew. They always like to look at this stuff. They always like to keep an eye on film and stuff like that. I had asked them straight up. They gave their evaluations. Austin Jackson had his best game as a pro against the New York Giants. And I get it. That's not saying a lot. The Giants are not exactly a great team to begin with. But Austin Jackson looked good, legitimately good, against the New York Giants. And you would think that, again, this is what makes it so incredibly just mind-boggling. We looked at this Dolphins offensive line and thought, oh my God, Tua is going to get killed because Kendall Lamb is not Teron Armstead. Austin Jackson is not good. Isaiah Wynn is an unknown. He's not even good when he's healthy. And yet all of these players that we were concerned about, they are playing well. The only offensive lineman so far that I can think of that has not played well, and it's sad that this is the way that it is Liam Eichenberg. Liam Eichenberg as a center, not great. Liam Eichenberg briefly as a guard, not great. So I'll give credit to Butch Barry because whatever he's done with these players, whatever he's done to Austin Jackson, because it's the same scheme. It's the same scheme. Maybe it was just the fact that he's getting constant coaching week in and week out because he looked good against the New England Patriots for those 14 snaps. I keep bringing back those 14 snaps from 2022 as if this was some just iconic sign of what Austin Jackson could potentially be. And yet it seems to be that history is repeating itself in that sense. Because all this talk about Austin Jackson, and we were saying, he looks really good against this particular team. Then he gets hurt. He's out for several weeks. He comes back against the Houston Texans. He looks god awful. Maybe it's his head. Maybe it's not his physical talent. Maybe it's just something that he needs to be constantly coached to remind himself of the basics, to remind himself of the fundamentals, so that way when game time happens, he actually looks like a competent offensive tackle. And he's looked more than competent. He's looked good. He has looked legitimately good It's hard for me to even wrap my head around it because as much as I wanted to give Austin Jackson the benefit of the doubt, and I tried many times on this show, I talked about, could this be the year he's good? Could this be the year he turns it around? And I was willing to give him the benefit of the doubt, but it was hard. It was so hard to do that because I was not convinced. I was not looking at Austin Jackson and saying, oh yeah, this is definitely the guy. He's going to absolutely prove us all wrong, and he's going to be the one to save us all at the right tackle position. I wasn't saying that. I was saying that I'm hoping. I am crossing my fingers, but not like this certain thing that Austin Jackson was going to be a stud all of a sudden. Maybe stud is too strong a word. Maybe it is, because he's not Teron Armstead or anything. But for what we've seen from Austin Jackson, the turnaround has been a 180. Because when the bottom when you've reached the point where you're at the bottom of the pile, which Austin Jackson was. I could not imagine any team trying to sign Austin Jackson and legitimately giving him a contract that says, you know what, we're going to trust that you still have potential. Austin Jackson, if he got anywhere after Miami, it was going to be a send a flyer out there. He's still a young kid. We'll throw a little bit of money at him, a slight smidge amount of money, just to be able to see if maybe, just maybe, our genius offensive line coach can get something out of him. Well, as it turns out, the Dolphins didn't need to send him away for that. Butch Barry, I don't know how he's doing it. Maybe Austin Jackson responds well to tough love. Maybe it's just the fact that he's getting constant coaching and he hasn't had to sit out of any weeks. Maybe that's all it is. Maybe Austin Jackson always had the capability of being good. He just needed some solid coaching, a good scheme to play in, and I get that that's a lot of pieces in place, but every single player on the team needs a good scheme to play in. If your scheme is garbage, it's not going to work, even if your players are good. If you have a great scheme, but you have garbage players, it's not going to work because your talent is bad. Everything has to be cohesive. And so far it is. Now, I want to briefly talk about something else here. Talk about the depth of the Miami Dolphins. With this team, we were assuming that this was an extremely top-heavy team, that the depth on the team is not going to be as good as we're hoping it will be. And there are some positions that there was concern. Obviously, offensive line was one of them. Every time Liam Eichenberg goes out there, I think to myself, oh God, is this whole offense about to fall to pieces? It seemed that was, in fact, the case when Connor Williams had to sit out for the game against the Buffalo Bills, and it was a miserable experience for all involved. Absolutely awful. Just god-awful. Now Connor Williams is back. Everything seems to be working again. But I don't want Liam Eichenberg out there. Ever. I don't think even Butch Barry can fix Liam Eichenberg at this point. It's so surreal that Liam Eichenberg was supposed to be the sure thing and Austin Jackson was the guy with the potential. And he was the project, the one that we were hoping he could use his athletic ability to be able to become something special. Meanwhile, Liam Eichenberg was drafted, and we thought, okay, he's going to be a sure thing. He's going to be solid, nothing spectacular, but he's going to be a good starting offensive lineman. He has been awful. Awful. Not every player can be salvaged. Noah Igbenogany traded him to the Dallas Cowboys for Kelvin Joseph. Kelvin Joseph is a special teamer. I don't like the idea of him on defense. Thank goodness Nick Needham is going to hopefully be coming back soon. Jalen Ramsey will eventually be coming back. The secondary will be getting reinforcements eventually. We will not have to rely on Justin Bethel to be the nickel corner forever. Not that I want to disrespect Justin Bethel. For what he is, he's doing a pretty good job. But he's not somebody that I'm looking at and say, you are the reason that this defense is going to work because you're going to be able to be counted on any given moment. Justin Bethel's a special teamer for a reason. Just like when I saw, can't even remember his name. Keon Crossan. That's him. Keon Crossan. Keon Crossan isn't supposed to be a main defender. He was supposed to be a special teams ace. He was supposed to be the equivalent of Walt Aikens from back in the day. He was supposed to be the team's new Michael Thomas. He was not supposed to be a starter. So it's the same thing for Justin Bethel. I like Justin Bethel better than a lot of those guys, but I don't want him as my main nickel corner. Give me Nick Needham back, please. And eventually he will come back, and I'm very happy about that. But this Miami Dolphins football team, Chris Grier, when he said that we were more worried about the offensive line than he was, this must have been what he was talking about. Because even the depth, aside from Eichenberg, like, we're waiting to see what Lester Cotton can do. Robert Jones is going to be coming back. Maybe he becomes the main left guard backup once he comes back. Who knows? There's a lot of depth on this football team. There really is. And speaking of which, that's going to be very important because, as it turns out, Devon Achane, and I believe that's how you say his name. I can't even remember anymore. I've been hearing that it's Achane. We heard A-Chain. That's not the truth anymore. It seems to change every other week. But right now, it's Devon Achane. Devon Achane is dealing with a knee injury. He's not likely to play for a few weeks. The play, basically what happened, it looked like he got his foot rolled under and it just kind of twisted his knees pretty bad. So hopefully it's not going to be anything that's going to keep him out for too long. But even if it did, and it's sad because I looked at Devon Achane and everybody else did too. And they were looking at him like, oh my God, this could be the offensive rookie of the year. Come Monday, before Monday's games, Devon Achane was ranked 37th in the league when it comes to actual rush attempts. He was second overall in the entire football league in actual rushing yards. In fact, I'm looking at the numbers right now. Even still, Devon Achane is second in the entire NFL in rushing yards. Right behind Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey is currently at 510 yards rushing. Devon Achane is at 460. In third place, Zach Moss of the Indianapolis Colts. Who saw that coming, right? But even still, the thing that makes it so incredible, the thing that makes it so bizarre, is that Devon Achane has 460 yards rushing, and if you actually filter it by attempts, he's tied now. He's tied for 37th with Javonte Williams. They both have 38 rushing attempts. Christian McCaffrey has 99. He has more rushing attempts than every other court running back in the NFL to get to that 510 yards. In the second place with rushing attempts is Travis Etienne of the Jaguars. He's averaging 4.2 yards a carry. He has 396 yards rushing. 7 touchdowns for McCaffrey. That's impressive. But you know what? Devon Achane has 5 rushing touchdowns. You know who's tied for number 1 with Christian McCaffrey? Raheem Mostert. Raheem Mostert is tied with Christian McCaffrey for 7 rushing touchdowns this season. Just what this Dolphins team has managed to do, man, is phenomenal. But back to Achane for just a minute. Averaging, this has to be for players who actually have a significant amount of rushing yards, right? Devon Achane is not first in the NFL in average rushing yards per attempt, okay? But here's what you have to consider. You have at number 1, Khalif Raymond of the Detroit Tigers. He's averaging 25.5 yards per carry. He only has 2 carries. Trey Tucker is in second with 25 yards per carry. He has 2 carries. Darius Davis of the Chargers, averaging 15.3 yards per carry. He has 4 carries total. Rondale Moore is number 4, 14.5 yards a carry. He has 8 carries total. Tutu Atwell, a wide receiver. This is the thing. All these other guys ahead of Achane in the average rushing yards per attempt, all 5 of these guys are wide receivers. They don't count. None of these guys have even gotten to 10 rushing attempts. Rondale Moore has the most out of the bunch of them with 8 for 116 yards rushing. And out of all the running backs in the league, Devon Achane is averaging 12.1 yards per carry. That is, honestly, it's not sustainable. It really isn't sustainable. I don't think it's sustainable. But the fact that he has done this on this team with this offensive line that allegedly was going to be one of the worst in the NFL again, at least for a little while, because Kendall Lamb, Isaiah Wynn, Austin Jackson, those are not names that inspire confidence. And yet they've managed to accomplish this much. We're talking about depth at running back. Devon Achane, for all he's accomplished, I don't think the running game is going to miss a beat. I really don't. Jeff Wilson looks like he's going to be coming back shortly. And even though it's going to take him a while to do so, Raheem Mostert is still playing at a phenomenal pace. Raheem Mostert has, like I said, tied for first place in the NFL with 7 rushing touchdowns. He has 58 carries, 314 yards. He's averaging 5.4 yards per carry. And it's very possible that the Dolphins, if Achane comes back soon enough, they might actually have 2,000 yards rushers. They could do it. They really could. But Raheem Mostert, he could easily eclipse 1,000 yards again, because now they have a better emphasis on rushing the football. And with all that being said, Jeff Wilson is not back yet. Devon Achane is going to be gone for a while. Raheem Mostert can't play every snap. So who do you turn to? Well, that's no problem. It really isn't. You know why? Because Salvon Ahmed is also there. Oh, well, Salvon Ahmed, what do we care about him? He's not like he's doing anything special. Look again. Just real quick. As of right now, mind you, again, Salvon Ahmed has not played that much. He's also had a little bit of injury history here. So far, he has 6 carries, 24 yards, averaging 4 yards a carry. Okay. 3 receptions, 28 yards. Okay. Again, he hasn't played that much. But every time he's touched the football, he's looked pretty good. He's looked pretty good. And then you're not even like the rookie out of BYU, Chris Brooks. My God, man. As of right now, he has 9 carries, 66 yards, averaging 7.3 yards a carry. What the heck, dude? Now, I grant you, the longest run he had, the biggest run that he had was a 52-yard rush. Okay, I get it. I understand. But this guy is also very capable of running in this offense. So no matter where you go in this running back room, for all this talk about Dolphins need Jonathan Taylor, Dolphins need Saquon Barkley, Dolphins need Josh Jacobs, and again, me guilty too, Dolphins not necessarily need, but would want Dalvin Cook. Dolphins did not need any of those guys. Raheem Mostert, Salvon Ahmed, Devon Achane, eventually Jeff Wilson when he comes back, Chris Brooks, undrafted rookie out of BYU. Every single one of these running backs is playing at a solid level. The depth on this team is more unreal than we ever could have imagined, at least on the offensive side of the football. At least on offense. On defense, we're still holding out our hopes on that. They looked good against the Giants. Could be better. Hopefully it continues to improve as more players come in. Jalen Ramsey will come back. Nick Needham will come back. Hopefully that will be better than what the Dolphins currently have. But just looking at this team, man, they're about to go face the Carolina Panthers at home at Hard Rock Stadium. Is anybody even remotely concerned about the Carolina Panthers at this point? I'm not. I'm definitely not. I'm looking at this Dolphins team and thinking, this is why we're Super Bowl contenders. Because even with all the injuries so far that we've suffered, we haven't lost our key players, obviously. Any team that loses their starting quarterback, their season is basically over. Tua Tagovailoa has remained healthy. Believe it or not, his jiu-jitsu has actually worked because there have already been several times where I've seen him get knocked down and he learned and he mentally braces himself, mentally and physically braces himself so that he does not knock his head against the turf, so that he protects himself from when he falls. And we were all looking at him like, oh, a guy's going to fall on him. He's not going to be able to move his arms. First of all, that's not how the game works anymore. Even if Tua gets squashed, there are going to be teams that are going to be flagging from now on. I truly believe that. Tua's too good now to not get some star treatment. Tua is protecting himself very well. He's getting the ball out quickly, so even if he does get hit, it's not going to be a quick hit. They're not going to be able to just pound him into the dirt, not without getting flagged. He gets the ball out too fast. They can't get to him in time. This team is phenomenal. And the depth has been phenomenal. The coaching has been phenomenal. And Chris Grier, my God, man. We thought he was so stupid. We thought we were so mad at him for what he had said. He basically called all of us out on the carpet and said, y'all are worrying too much. He basically said, stop worrying. I know better than you. Don't worry about it. We got this. And we were furious. I was furious with Chris Grier for that comment. And justifiably so, because we'd seen the history of him in the offensive line. Him finding talent on the OL has been a miserable experience. Liam Eichenberg, again, Austin Jackson. We were looking at Austin Jackson. Austin Jackson was a bust. Liam Eichenberg seems to still be a bust. The only hit that he's really had has been Laramie Tunsil, who traded obviously to the Houston Texans for that treasure chest of draft picks and other assets. And Robert Hunt. That's it. That's all he's hit on. You want to talk about free agents? That's a different story. Teron Armstead and Connor Williams were already proven assets, so that doesn't count. But drafting? Blah, please. And yet here we are. Butch Barry, I don't know if he's the miracle worker. I don't know if it's just being in the second year in this scheme. If it's just that Tua gets the ball out too quick so they can't really lose battles. Credit it to whatever you want. This offensive line is good now. And Chris Grier was right. We were more worried about it than he was, and now we're seeing why. That's going to be it for this show. Thank you all so much for listening. This upcoming Friday, you will get a Behind Enemy Lines with me and a Carolina Panthers person. Hopefully, I don't know who that is going to be yet, but it is going to be somebody I think who's going to have some interesting insight. Maybe we can find out what's going on with these Panthers. Maybe we can figure out, maybe they might surprise us. Who do we need to keep an eye on? We'll see about that. So thank you all once again. Make sure you go to prizepicks.com, use the promo code 5, that's FIVE, and they will match up to $100 on your initial deposit when you sign up. We will see you all Friday for another episode of Fins Nation.